information age has arrived. Not only has it arrived, our kids know it, our students know it. They know exactly where to go for all of the information. And obviously the biggest question I have to ask you is, do you know where the information is? Okay, it's one of those things that honestly, these days, you could assign a paper, give the topic, and kids are gonna go get the information whether you want to or not, whether you want them to or not. It's the age where Googling became a verb. How did that happen? Well, what's your first instance? You got a question? Personally, I Google it. There's your verb for you. It's the way it goes. Went to go see this guy. Actually, a couple of people went with me to go see this guy speak, David Warlick. Tremendous speaker. Actually, I got to give him credit. This presentation software I'm using it's the first time I'd ever seen it used, so I'm using it now. It's called Prezi. It's pretty cool. But his whole point was, right up there, we're preparing our children for a future we cannot describe. How do you know what it's going to look like in 10 years? How do you know what our 10-year-olds are going to be able to do by the time they're 20? We don't have a flipping clue what's going to happen in 10 years. So it's hard to prepare our children for that future. How do we use our class time? The balance between content and process. We talk about this a lot at BA. We don't teach content. I remember Steve Munger, first day I got here. I'm coming from a school that was all content-based. What's the curriculum? What's the curriculum? I go in and I ask Steve, all right, you're having me teach Algebra 2, Geometry, and Algebra 1. What am I teaching? He looked right at me and said, Dave, we don't teach content here, we teach process. And I said, Steve, that's great, but you're not helping me out at all right now. Okay? And I looked to the new folks who are coming in. Most new teachers will step into a situation and say, what am I teaching? It's a crutch, it's okay. It's okay to say that. But we've got to really further define what we mean by process. When we teach process, what does that mean? And I'm going to show you how technology can help. Because basically, can technology help with that balance? Here we are with a 50-minute period. What are we doing with that 50 minutes in that period? We come in and we teach content. And being the good, forward-thinking teachers that we are, we say, okay, Dave says we want to use technology. Most education people out there saying using technology is good. So we bring in the ever-popular PowerPoint. Not that I'm an anti-PowerPoint guy. Yes, Mr. Burgess.
No, I'm just
stretching. Oh, yeah, PowerPoint guy right there. PowerPoint should love it. This is my own personal term. You're gonna love this, Matt. Sorry, but I call it the PowerPoint pitfall. We're going to use some technology. Here's a PowerPoint presentation. But the problem with PowerPoint is it's still content-based. I've seen some slides in the last, not to crack on anybody, but in the last 2 years being here, I've seen some slides that are pretty heavy-duty content-based on those slides. Okay, so why are we using PowerPoint? Well, because it's a whiz-bang, it's a flash. It's a, here's some content. Many teachers use PowerPoint because their handwriting stinks. And if they didn't have PowerPoint, they'd use that clear slide over the overhead. How many people were taught like that, clear slide? And that's actually not that old, right? Okay, I was actually going to put a overhead projector and stuff like that. How you remember the film strips where you hear the audio tape and you'd have to hear the beep in order to put the film strip. Okay.
And it gets the new ones. The old ones didn't have sound.
The old ones don't. You got to start thinking about it. Here's some content flow ideas I want you to think about. In the past, okay, the relationship between a teacher, the content, and the student was pretty much what you see right there. Teacher was solely responsible for deciding what was going to be passed on to the student. And that was done in rows, and all the students were there listening to the teacher. Some people still teach that way. I don't know of anybody here that does, to be honest with you, but I know some people still teach that way. Karen first got her job in the elementary school. She stepped into a classroom where her kindergarten teacher was still teaching exactly this way. And this was only 10 years ago. Not that it's wrong. The only thing I'll say is it's a little outdated. So what are we doing now in the present? So now we have this content cloud kind of thing. We have a teacher who now has a different role, because the student has access to a whole lot of content. What does this force the teacher to do now? Evaluate content. Not necessarily create content, but evaluate it. So now that we can pass on, if you notice there are 6 arrows up above and there's only 4 that make the cut after the teacher. So the teacher obviously has cut out some content saying this is not good for you, this is not, this is not the information I want you to have. That's kind of now. You could question my titles at the top of each section. So what are we looking at in the future? The one major shift in the future is not only are we kind of filtering out the content, but we have this other problem happening where now students are doing what?
Evaluating content.
They're not only evaluating, they're creating it. And we're sitting here going, holy smokes. There's a video I like to show. It was made by a 6-year-old kid talking about sweatshops. You should see this video. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And all the kid was given was, let's make a video about sweatshops, and it was kind of after the whole sweatshop thing blew up. She had data in there, and those of you that are at that conference, you saw that video. It was unbelievable. She had data in it. She had a soundtrack to it. It was absolutely unbelievable. So this is kind of where we're going. Who's probably the most important person now in this process?
Hopefully the student.
Students pretty important, but the teacher is now too, because now we've got content that may or may not be suitable, and there's 30,000 times more of it. Might even be right now. How do they learn from video games? Because they're learning from video games. There's no teaching. They understand that, boom, I'm sitting in a chair, I click on this tree, a branch comes down and whacks me in the head. Probably, I'm not going to do that again. It's about as experiential learning as you can get, okay? They're probably not going to sit there with somebody next to them pointing out everything on the landscape and saying, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this. It's not the way they learn. They learn by doing. Huge thing. It's engaging to the participant. They obviously want to do it. And I guess if I was going to be critical of some classes in education as a whole, not just here, I think we lose sight of the fact that it needs to be engaging. The information, either the information needs to be engaging or the way it's delivered needs to be engaging. One of the two. If you don't have either, you're in for a long career, especially with this age group these days. Done with no regard to time and space. How many kids do we know that can sit in front of a game and play it for 17 hours and not get affected whatsoever? No time and space. They don't care. Shouldn't all our classes be like that? I know it's a lofty goal, but shouldn't our classes be like that? Where they sit down, they get engaged, we get going in a 50-minute period. Before we know it, I'm like looking at my clock going, holy smokes, we gotta get out of here. We gotta get out of here. And the kids look up and said, that's the end of class? Again, lofty goal. Is it gonna happen day in, day out? No. Should it happen every now and then? Probably. Meaningful, authentic learning. It means something to them. They are proud of the fact that they got 17,000 extra bonus points on Halo. Proud of that fact. They boast about it all over campus. There's something to be learned from gaming, and that's why the education field is jumping right into it and trying to figure out. We have a name site. 4 C's. Again, all these links, if you want to, I will give you a whole sheet that has all these links of all of these things. There is a, Worcester Academy does what they call a wall mash on it, where basically their Ning site is totally created by students. Totally created by students. Okay, which again, then you get into that question of who's looking at the content. And we kind of approached this a little bit when Sven was talking about writing comments and stuff like that on articles that we read. When you turn over a Ning site to a student, it might cause you a little bit of uneasiness, maybe. And I think we got to get beyond that a little bit, because we're shortcutting all of our students from getting some very good content for us. You got to take the bad with the good. It's just the way it goes. Kid I know right now has a blog. So now we talk about creating a podcast. You can record your voice, pop it out on a website, and have students access it at a later time. Video production. You might look at the video camera over there and say, why is he videoing himself? Well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm eventually probably going to make some clips of stuff, but number two, and this is something that our kids have kind of dialed into pretty quickly. Nate Cook, just to give you kind of a case study, is probably one of the most talented students we've ever had here on campus. He videoed everything, everything. For what reason? Because he could. And then when he starts to create all these other things, he's got all this footage that he just takes his creativity to a whole new level when he talks about video. I use video production right here just to video me to get better at presenting, get better at speaking. You will find as a teacher, I'm going to take off for a second and say, as a teacher, if you're not videoing some classes that you're teaching, you are missing a whole world of content that you never knew existed. You can see a lot by videoing. And I know it makes some people uncomfortable, not so much the videoing of it, but watching it after. I remember talking with Stacy after. She had to video her, her presentation when she did it last. And I was kind of putting it off. And, sure, you want to watch it? She's like, I don't want to watch it, but she had to. But they had her do that, right? When I went to school to learn how to teach, we videoed everything. And we had to sit there and watch it. Not only did we have to sit there and watch it, we had to show it, it was gross, to our teachers. We had to show it to other students in the class. We would play a video, and all the students in the class, you're sitting in a classroom of teachers, all the students in the class are critiquing your video. Talk about uncomfortable. Was it good? Holy smokes, it was the best thing I ever went through. Best thing I ever went through. Our students are doing it, I'll tell you that right now. Right now. So what do we do during class? I hope this will work. There we go. Oh, how many people have taken an education course where they talk about Bloom's Taxonomy? Now we're getting really deep in the mud here. This is Bloom's Taxonomy. Benjamin Bloom headed a group of 1956, by the way, which, by the way, honestly, I spent an entire class an entire semester talking about Bloom's Taxonomy, believe it or not. So I kind of believe it. Kind of believe it's got some merit. But it's basically a triangle of higher learning, where students enter at the knowledge level and they work their way up to synthesis and evaluation. And I question the fact, how much time do we spend in the knowledge level? Do we think kids are smart because they can spit back information we've already given to them? Or do we think kids are smart when they actually evaluate something and create something based upon it? So and again, 1956. So I looked at the last two, synthesis. Here's some action words you look at when you talk about what does it mean when a kid is in the synthesis level. Arrange, assemble, collect, compose, construct, create, design, develop, formulate, manage, so on and so forth. I'll look back at the top one, evaluation. Highest level of thinking according to Bloom. Appraise, argue, assess, attach, choose, compare, defend, so on and so forth. You got some action verbs in there. Yeah, that's something else. I'm going to skip that. That'll be for a later date. I got a whole other avenue that I'd like to go into there. And it kind of relates to, we spend a lot of time coaching, and how does coaching directly affect our teaching, that kind of thing. There's a whole thing that I can go through at some point. But again, what do we do with our class time? If content's taken out, we push the kids into higher level. We take the information that they're acquiring, and we say, evaluate that information for me. Create a video. Create anything. Do a presentation. We talked about this before. What constitutes graduation? Let's do an exit presentation they're responsible for. Better yet, let's do an exit presentation in a team philosophy, where the team is responsible for the exit presentation. Okay? Those kinds of things are where it's going to be at. I may give a kid an assignment. Go to my website and look at the Captivate video on how to create a calendar in HTML code. I just saved myself 47 minutes and 32 seconds of class time. For some of you, that might scare you. I talked to my wife about it, and she asked the question. It was a loaded question. I knew it was coming. She said, well, what are you going to do in class if the kids, they're not going to show up to class? If you're engaging them in thought and bringing them up to the higher levels, they'll come to class, guarantee it. You're going to take that content you're getting from the outside, and you're going to talk and discuss about that content. You're not going to be the information person anymore. You're going to be the one that they can bounce ideas off of. That's an interesting place for teachers to be. I think we do a good job here. I think anytime I walk into a classroom, and I know Drew could probably talk about this with the Harkness method and all of that. I think anytime I walk into a classroom and the classroom is set up like a U, probably a good thing. It probably means there's some communication going on, that kind of thing. I'm by no means criticizing anybody in this room about it. I just want you to stay focused on that. Let's make sure that we use our class time not just to give out content. Let's discuss the content, because that's what's going to help them. You don't need to show them where all the content's coming from. They're going to find it no matter what. They do need to decide, obviously. Missions provide a program, young man, unique one-year postgraduate environment to prepare for the rigors of college and beyond. So you might ask the question, all right, we got all this content. What are colleges doing with content? Some of you may or may not know, MIT has an open courseware project. Back in 2001, they decided we're going to put up all our course content for everybody to see. We're just going to put it out there. Nowadays, 56 million current and prospective students go to that website and look at the courses that MIT has to offer. Do you think that was a bold step in 2001? What do most educators believe? Oh, my content is sacred. If I give up my content, if I give up the information that I'm passing along, students won't need to be in my class. They did it for every instructor. Talk about a political nightmare there. How do you think teachers felt about that?
Yale's doing the same way too, part of the classes out there.
MIT and Yale. Did you say Yale? Yale. Harvard's going the same way. Okay, this is a scary concept for some people.
Dave, there's some of these schools that I hear right recently that not only put the content on, but some of the online classes are free.
Yes.
The next, my opinion looks like.
Want a class that's structured like a role-playing game? An accredited, and this is the big joke, you know, the last 5 years, University of Phoenix, oh, you got your degree at University of Phoenix. I'll come out of the closet. I got my master's from an online course. Does that make me any less educated than somebody else? I don't think so, because I wouldn't have taken the course had I not thought that way. That's a paradigm you're all going to have to change your minds about. An accredited
paradigm you have to you could consider changing your mind about.
Well, in time it'll change it for you at some point. When Harvard offers an online course or an online degree, you know, it's not me, it's not my opinion, it's the opinion of the people who we deem, to a certain extent, important in the field, and you'll see that in a quick second. An accredited bachelor's degree for a few $1,000s, think about that comment. A free peer-to-peer wiki university, some of you have no idea what that comment means. These all exist today. The overture to a complete educational remix. I'm going to have a problem with my next statement. How are we doing with that? Part of our mission statement. How are we doing with that? How are we doing with preparing our young men for college and beyond? I don't have an answer. I know you don't. I'm just saying, something to think about. We got some other avenues. There's some crazy stuff going on. Integral, basically taking Facebook, using it as an education platform. Your teachers are your friends. How about that? You're not spending time looking at pictures of people drinking. There's video clips, there's commentaries, there's blogs, there's all kinds of stuff. Here's one called Tutor, Online Masters of Arts Teaching Program. Students create video content and use social media technology, something like Facebook. Not so much that this is important, but look who is creating this. Princeton Review founder, John Katzman. I don't know, maybe you think that's a big deal, maybe you don't. I was impressed. Peer-to-peer, online tutoring, students by students, okay? That's a concept we use in math lab, something like that, but it's online. Maybe it's something to think about transitioning our math lab to, you know? WGU, this is an interesting concept. Accredited skills-based assessment. Here's Bob Mendenhall, the president. Let's create a university that measures learning. We do not have credit hours. We do not have grades. We simply have a series of assessments that measures competencies, and on that basis, award the degree. There's a story about a tech guy, kind of piqued my curiosity. He'd been in the field 15 years, had 0 certifications, kind of near and dear to my heart. 0 certifications. Goes to school to become certified Microsoft competent. Takes all the tests, doesn't enter one class, doesn't enroll, takes all of the competency exams, and immediately gets his master's through this school in information technology. Think about that concept for a second. On-the-job training? I don't know. Maybe some of you may have a problem with it. I don't know. Edupire, strictly video learning. You want to learn Mandarin Chinese? Which I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it is one of the hardest speaking languages on the face of the planet, I think somebody said. It's hard to, that'll just show you, nobody agreed or disagreed, so nobody knows any Mandarin Chinese. But basically they put out a whole class structure based on Mandarin Chinese, all in video. Content's out there. Newton. Customizable content for each student. Kaplan, there's a name. Okay, this guy, Jose Ferrar, was heavily involved in Kaplan for a long time. Not only am I showing you names of some pretty cool individuals doing this stuff, these are individuals who are showing up at board meetings asking for money, and they're getting heavily funded. Heavily funded. Where do you start? What does this mean for you? Where do you go with all this? Keep in mind, mountains are climbed one step at a time, okay? I got my little picture, inspirational picture of Rocky climbing that whole mountain right there. Again, I can't stress enough, I don't want to sound like we're in trouble, because we're not. We're not in trouble. But we got to start thinking about these things as we move through. When 5 years down the road we look at it, and 10 years down the road we look at it, and we're still standing up in class, giving lectures on whatever, when the kid 3 rows back is going to argue every point you have because of something they read on Wikipedia the night before. That's the reality. Spin that around. I want you to go find information on Civil War weapons. What is that? That whole class that next day is going to kind of change when you start talking about what did you find on Wikipedia? What did you find on YouTube? What did you find on the Discovery Channel? What did you TiVo? What did you DVR on the History Channel? Bring it in on a DVD. You guys are all sitting here shaking your heads, but I'm telling you what, our kids coming in this year are ready for that. And I challenge you all to start thinking about how we can become ready for that as well. I haven't done one thing, I say this time and time on. I haven't done a website. Maybe at some point between September and May, you could get one page out of syllabus. Okay, we've tried the mandatory thing. And in the end, what ended up happening was I was creating websites for everybody. So I don't think the mandatory thing works. I'm going to appeal to your sense of excitement about teaching. I'm going to appeal to your sense of excitement about students who you're going to talk to and say, if you haven't done a website, start there. I'm sure Phil would still be more than willing to help put websites together. I will hopefully have more time to help you do those kinds of things. Start thinking about where you can get content for your class other than just in a textbook. YouTube's unbelievable. Unbelievable amount of content on YouTube. Some great, some not so great. The warning I'll give you is you'll spend a lot of time looking at video on YouTube you're never going to use. But it's entertaining as all get up. Start there. Start looking at content. Start looking at your class time. Look at the 50 minutes you get on Monday, A period, and say, what am I going to do with that 50 minutes? Am I going to stand up and talk for 50 minutes? Can I give the content to them outside? The whole sports analogy I was giving in class at time and space. Every coach in here talks about, I guarantee, no matter what sport you're in, time and space, gap control. What do we do when our time and space is all shifted? Where I don't have to be in class for 50 minutes to give them content. They can get content outside the class. How does that change the way you look at your class? That kind of thing. Any questions? Thank you all so very much. It's 12, 15 minutes.
Yes, we went a